Right, episode 4, season 1, Outspoken Engineer podcast, Australia versus the UK. We're not talking about air source heat pumps. We're talking about aircon. If you want to talk about air source heat pumps, tune in to episode 5. You've just started it off. So, Mitch, Outspoken Engineer. Mitch, you're a service technician in Australia. You run your own air conditioning company. How long have you been trading for?
So I've been out on my own for 10 years.
Okay.
And I've been a technician for 15.
Okay. And the sort of range of works that you do, is it installation, service, maintenance? You know, what's your percentage of the sort of works you carry out?
So I do it all. Mostly residential stuff, but like installations, servicing, maintenance, I do it all. I do some commercial, but it is mostly residential.
Okay. And in Australia, the way commercial and residential sort of lay, can you be an installer that can do both, or do you tend to have companies which specialise purely on commercial and then some which purely, deal with residential?
You can absolutely do both. But yeah, I think some people just specialize on one or the other. And it's not because they don't have like the technical knowledge to work on the equipment.
Yeah.
It's more like there's a lot more hoops you have to jump through to work with commercial clients and whatnot.
For sure. Okay.
So I like residential because it's more basic.
And in Australia, it's a massive market.
Yeah, we live on a desert, so it's pretty hot over here.
So looking at the going back the last five years, obviously Australia you have the climate. Has the popularity in air conditioning in Australia improved over the last 5 years? If we're looking at residentially, has everyone always had air conditioning, or the last 5 years has it become more popular?
Yeah, so no one had it back in the day. It was more than 5 years ago. I think maybe 10 years ago.
Okay.
Somewhere it changed where it used to be a luxury to have aircon.
Yeah.
Now it's expected. But our electrical grid wasn't designed for everyone to have aircon, so they're having to upgrade that regularly to keep up with the popularity of air conditioning.
Okay.
That's interesting.
And so when you say back in the day, is that sort of 10 years ago? Is that when you first got in the industry?
I think I think about 10 years ago it became expected that you would have air conditioning in your home.
Okay.
But for example, like I never ever had, like when I was living at home with my parents, for example, growing up, we didn't have air conditioning, and that was the norm. If you had air conditioning, it was a luxury.
Right,
but not anymore. Now it's expected.
So if you have a street of 10 houses, and all 10, say 8 of them had air conditioning, would the 2 that didn't have them probably suffer in a sale purchase because it didn't have AC?
Yeah, absolutely.
Damn, okay. And so it is, and those that aren't having air conditioning fitted to the houses, is it usually because of cost, or is it usually because they're old school and they sort of just deal with things, a bit hard-faced?
I think cost. I think it's cost. I think everyone would love to have air conditioning. Some people just, can't do it.
Okay.
So I think it's cost.
Okay. And then mentioning cost, what are the top, if we were to say top 3 brands in Australia, or, most popular, most out there, not necessarily to say they're better than the other, but, if you're in Australia, typically, what are the top 3 brands in residential?
So Daikin, Fujitsu, and they're the 2 most popular. I'd say maybe Panasonic after that.
Okay.
Well, Fujitsu being that popular.
Yeah, Fujitsu is probably one of the least popular in the UK. But that's interesting. Okay.
I think it's just the marketing. because they have a marketing campaign
Ah,
in
Yeah, that's
Australia where they
interesting.
have a famous cricketer, and their slogan is Australia's favourite air.
okay.
All right.
Australia's
I
favourite.
don't think it's the most popular brand, but that's their slogan.
Who's the cricketer?
They call him Tubby Taylor. He used to be the captain of. I don't even know. I think it's Mark Taylor.
So he's not
It was
actually
before my era. He's like an old cricketer.
okay. So that marketing campaign worked because they're still quite popular in Australia because of Mark Taylor.
That's
or
crazy
Tub.
that they're even marketing though over there. Like, we
Yeah,
don't
so
really get much here.
correct. So
marketing-wise.
yeah, it's really interesting. That's obviously a great sign of a great marketing campaign because Fujitsu in the UK, their marketing budget, I would have thought, is
£1.50.
£1.50 compared to Daikin or Mitsubishi Electric, who throw hundreds of thousands. So okay, right. Well, maybe Fujitsu, if you're listening, Mitch has just given you a great
Bump it up to a
opportunity.
£5.
Yeah, you can get your marketing campaign, increase the revenue and start taking over some market share. Okay, so they're the most popular. In regards to the trade in Australia, you said it's not a necessity anymore. It's not more of a luxury; it's more of a necessity. If you were leaving school or college, what is is air conditioning as popular as becoming an electrician or a plumber or a gas engineer? Where does it sit in regards to? Because in the UK, if you lined up 100 engineers, I'd say 50 of them would be electricians, 40 of them would be plumbers, and then 10 of them would be sort of AC HVAC engineers. What's the sort of, is it as popular? Is it around about?
I honestly think it might be more popular. So
Oh, right. Okay.
it wasn't always like that. You would either become like a electrician, plumber, or builder, or whatever.
Okay.
But now, I actually think in Australia the HVAC industry is bigger than the building and the plumbing industry put
Goodness
together.
me.
Oh,
It's
jeez.
massive.
Right. Okay. And is that HVAC meaning air conditioning? So we look at splits, multi-splits, VRF, and then in terms of ventilation and gas, is that what you're suggesting when we say HVAC, or are you actually saying no, it's just air conditioning?
Just air conditioning and refrigeration.
Damn.
We actually don't really use the word HVAC that much in Australia.
Right. Is that okay?
Just
So it
air
is
conditioning, refrigeration.
okay. So you're suggesting that in Australia the market, so you'd probably have more air conditioning engineers than you would plumbers.
I believe so, yes.
Goodness me. Okay, we need some of your engineers to come over to
Yeah.
the UK because it's not like that here.
Yeah. As we're on the topic of education, what's the education system? How do you become an AC engineer in Australia? Is there do you have to go to college or?
So, first of all, we actually have a massive shortage of tradesmen. So we need your tradies to come here. And how you become how you become a technician, it's the same for electrical, plumbing, air conditioning, whatever. You do a 4-year apprenticeship.
Yeah.
And 4 years on the tools. But for 3 of those years, you only work 4 days, and the 5th day you go and do TAFE, they call it, which is basically just like the theory side of it.
Okay.
So it's a 4-year apprenticeship, and for 3 of those years, you got to go to TAFE 1 day a week.
Okay. So with that, because I actually used to work with an engineer in the UK that actually emigrated to the States, and I never forget when he left, he actually had to go back to college in the UK because the standard of technician in Australia is basically significantly higher than the UK. So just to confirm, Mitch, so in the UK, to become a qualified engineer, you just need to do 2 years in college. And that's pretty much it with loads of education. As soon as you've got your certificate, which you could actually get from doing a 2-week training course, which is quite bad, you then are qualified to work in the UK. But in Australia, he had to go back to college to do a 3rd year, and then he had to become an electrician and do an electrical qualification. Is that still the case in Australia?
Honestly, I don't know how it works with going to another country and what our qualifications are compared to yours.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no way that you can become a tradesman in this country without doing a 4 years on the tool. So when you say like you had to go to college for 2 years, is that 1 day a week or is that 5 days a week?
That would be between 1 to 2 days a week. Yeah, we call it day release here. So you'd be on the tools 4 days and then you would do 1 day in a classroom. But in terms of your 4 years, maybe unpacking your 4 years, is there an element of electricity and electrical works and certification in that 4 years? Because you mentioned off air that you deal with a mega. I think a lot of engineers in the UK with, maybe between 2 to 5 years experience have never even used a mega.
Yeah, so if you do an electrician's like apprenticeship, the air conditioning apprenticeship, we actually do a bit of that.
Okay.
So let's just say, for example, I wanted to become an electrician.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have to do their whole course because I would get credits for the stuff that I've already done.
Understood.
So yes, there is like a fair bit of electrical involved.
Okay. And
I'd never used a mega until I started working on inverters, and I believe you have to have that in your toolkit if you're working on Daikin at least.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Actually, all inverters.
Do you is that mean in testing? You're obviously suggesting testing compressors, obviously inverter check. We in the UK we have inverter checkers, but you're obviously suggesting mega and compressors, right?
Yeah. So I have an inverter checker as well, but yeah, definitely doing like resistance checks on the compressors for sure, because it's a totally different ball game now because all the inverters are using high voltage DC.
Yeah.
And it's just totally different to like the old clunkers that
are for sure
sitting around the US, for example.
For sure. Okay, wonderful. So
with the greatest respect.
just wrapping up the last sort of 2 years. So if we mention the word refrigerant, what have the last 2 years brought in regards to refrigerants in Australia? I've seen a few of your videos, I think I watched last night a heat pump VRF Daikin installation that you put up, which looked pretty neat. And that looked like it was a 410A model.
Yep.
I think the video was about a year old, actually. But where are you with refrigerants in Australia, and how is it being enforced?
Okay, so now all the new units coming out are R32.
Okay.
Except the Daikin VRVs are still coming out with 410 refrigerant. I'm not sure why they've kept that with just the VRVs, but everything else it's all R32.
Okay.
And when I started my apprenticeship, so 15 years ago, that's when R410 was coming in.
I see.
So
how is R32 how is R32 being treated in Australia? Because in the UK it's flammable. Is R32 flammable in Australia?
Yep.
It is. And how as an engineer
so
is your
we have a
sorry Mitch, how is your attitude as an engineer towards R32 being flammable?
So yeah, it's flammable, and we have a governing body called the Australian Refrigeration Council, and they have sent out stickers to everyone. So when you install these air conditioners, they want you to put this sticker on.
Yeah.
So people know that it's flammable, and they try to educate you. Like, for example, if you were to do any like flare connections that are inside the house, you can no longer do that with R32 refrigerant. So we are educated on it.
Okay.
As like a technician, I basically treat it the same as 410.
Yeah.
But yeah, just follow the rules.
So you mentioned cutting off flare nuts. Are you suggesting that you have to? Oh, sorry, you're about flare nuts. You suggesting that you now have to remove them and just braze, just sweat them.
So not if the connections are outside of your house. So if, for example, you're roughing in a house or an apartment block, and you would have to normally do the connections like behind the unit,
yes,
the indoor unit, like but inside the actual house, you can't do that anymore with R32. However, to be honest, there is probably a lot of tradesmen still doing that because they don't care.
Yeah. Okay. So is is there an attitude of is the word illegal? Is it illegal to do that?
Yes, it's illegal.
And if you were caught doing that, just to see
You
the
get
police,
fined.
just to see, sorry, Mitch, the policing methods. If you were to do that in my house in Australia, and I was to say, why is there flare nuts behind the units? Could I complain to someone and you would get fined?
Yes, so you would complain to the Australian Refrigeration Council,
Yeah.
and me as a company or a tradesman can get fined a lot of money.
Okay.
And I actually think you can, get arrested.
Oh,
it's a
really?
proper law.
Jeez.
Okay. So is that fear that you speak? Is it so? It's actual fear, and that could happen.
So it can absolutely happen. So, for example, I have been I've had my company now for 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
and the first 5 years I got audited like 3 times by the Australian Refrigeration Council,
Yeah.
and you have to have that they make sure that you have like a reclaim unit,
For sure.
like an electronic leak detector,
Mhm.
like a vac pump, all the correct stuff. So it's pretty full on. Like,
Okay.
What, they just turn up on
Yeah.
site or rock up to your house and say, "Show me the back of your
yeah,
van"?
absolutely.
God.
They don't do it out of the blue. They'll give you warning,
Yeah.
but they expect the documentation
To be that.
that you
Yeah.
have been like making records of what you have reclaimed, what you have used, how you're maintaining your gas bottles and
Okay.
stuff like that.
So Mitch,
there
one.
is a legitimate fear, yeah, that
Okay. So one thing that I do know with Australia, and I've always had a respect for it, is you are bringing in new refrigerants, meaning R32, which has got a lower global warming potential, and you've confirmed that they have a policing body. In the UK, we have a couple of bodies which are policing, but in regards to fear, if I was to release a bottle of R32 outside the front of a customer's house, there is no fear in the UK because you can go on a 2-week training course and then actually buy this refrigerant. And unfortunately, we do have a lot of engineers in the UK which are not trained correctly because the demand for engineers is relatively high. So people are rushed through to get qualified. And this is something which has been, apparently getting worse in the UK. In some elements, it's better. But if we fast forward to early 2000s, we used to have something called safe handling of refrigerants. And that sounds exactly like the Australian Refrigeration Council. And that's when we were on R22. So on R22, it was standard. It was standard It was very. I don't think they did inverter compressors with R22, but it was very standard refrigerant. But it was so well policed that I'd be petrified to release refrigerant because I'd be arrested or I'd be fined. In the UK, unfortunately, we don't have that. But there's respect for myself to Australia because as much as an engineer, it probably can be difficult for yourself to work with, but there's a sort of there's credit and there's a class element to it because people but you did suggest that people do mistreat and do bend the rules.
Yeah, so our license that we get is called a refrigerant handling license.
Yeah.
And that is given to you by the Australian Refrigeration Council. And it's not perfect. So in terms of the fear, there are still a lot of people that do exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I think, for me, I would not just be letting gas out of someone's aircon in their front yard because I would be concerned that they would come out and ask a question.
For sure.
So there is a bit more fear.
Okay, good.
Which, I try to do the right thing, and there's actually a campaign where they say, look for the tick. And it's basically you get the tick when you're complying with the Australian Refrigeration Council.
Understood.
So, yeah.
Understood. Okay, so in regards, there's obviously frustration as a company if you were to quote against somebody that doesn't have the tick and they were to be significantly cheaper than yourself. That's obviously something that we can never get around, but I'm sure there's frustration with that where you have people aren't correctly licensed.
Yeah, to be honest, you have to have the tick because if you don't have the tick, they will close you down. So
Right.
there's no one getting around without the tick. Because you may be able to install an aircon, I guess, but
Hmm.
you'll never be able to get refrigerant and repair people's air conditioners.
Right.
But don't get me wrong, there's definitely people, like Australia's not perfect, there's definitely people doing the wrong thing. But I just think that the Australian Refrigeration Council, not everyone likes paying the fees and
Yeah.
like the license fees and that. But at the end of the day, everyone has to have it. So
For sure.
it's pretty like level playing field.
For sure. Gotcha.
Mm.
Touching on something that's massive in the UK at the moment, and that's air source heat pumps. It's everywhere. We can't get away from it at the moment. What's air source heat pumps mean to you in Australia at the moment? Is there a big drive to come off gas and natural gas and coal and using air source heat pumps? How is that in Australia?
There's no talk of that whatsoever.
Really?
None.
Wow.
Okay, so how do you heat your water in your house? Like, what's the conventional way?
So just electric element
Just an immersion.
is
Okay.
the most yeah, that is the most popular.
Okay.
There is like there is like a push slightly to get like a heat pump. We call it heat pump hot water systems.
That's
but
it. That's it.
They're just not as effective. But for me, I have electric element,
Okay.
and most people, if they don't have that, they'll just have like gas that they burn. Like it's
For sure. Just natural gas.
It's instantaneous hot water. Yeah.
So how obviously Australia is warm. Do you have cold winters? Or is it always hot?
No. It's not always hot. Like but it's the coldest the very coldest morning you'll get here in Sydney.
Mhm.
Like, and this is rare, but the coldest I've ever seen it here in Sydney is 6 degrees Celsius.
Okay, right. Okay, which is cold. Which is cold.
Yeah,
So,
it's
like,
cold.
What
it's cold.
what
yeah,
would you heat
that's
your
what I
house
mean.
with? Would you use your air conditioning to heat your house?
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay, fine. So you're electric immersion. So
So
there's
that's
no.
what I mean.
Yep.
Sorry, when I watch like these contractors in the US, it's a totally different industry almost because they're using like gas furnaces and then they put like an air conditioner in line with
For sure.
that
DX
to
cool,
do
yeah.
cooling. Whereas you don't see that here. It's all just reverse cycle air conditioners.
Right, okay. And then you're using electric to top up for the heating. And you're storing the water.
Yeah.
Damn. Okay.
Okay.
Well, it's interesting about the air source because obviously in the UK we're a colder climate. So having an air source heat pump, an air conditioning unit with a heat exchanger in the outdoor unit, which is doing radiators and hot water, that is on fire at the moment in the UK and Europe. We can't get away from it.
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
So does that work effectively? Because if there's no heat, like if it's cold outside,
Yeah.
and air conditioning obviously works by heat transfer.
Yeah.
Like, do you think it's effective?
There's so much noise. My opinion is we're going to do a few videos on this because as you are and as I am, we're engineers. They are effective below 0 degrees. There are some big drop-offs on some of the units. So where you get your sort of 1 to 5, COPs of 5 kilowatts of energy from a kilowatt of electricity. As soon as you go below 0, it drops significantly. But my concern with air source heat pumps in the UK is at the moment we have gas boilers. To replace a gas boiler in someone's house is, between £1,000 and £2,000. Heat pump companies, and if some of them are listening, I know exactly what you're doing. If you Google how long does an air source heat pump last in the UK, people are saying 15 to 20 years. I know very little air conditioning systems which last 15 to 20 years. So what's going to happen is in about 10 to 15 years' time, to replace these, they're going to cost them £5,000 to £7,000. But there is no talk of that because everyone is just selling. You've got engineers saying if you can't design a heat pump system to work efficiently, you shouldn't be doing what you're doing. And I'm sitting on the sidelines thinking, I'm an aircon guy. I've never known a system to last 10 to 20 years. 10 years, if you get and I'm sure you'd agree, if you have a system that lasts 15 years, that's good going.
Absolutely, and that is actually my gripe with inverter. So, like, I used to work, like I said, at the start of my career on these carrier units that were on the back end of their life,
Yeah.
and they were dead set like 20, 30 years old,
Yeah.
and they'd obviously had some repairs, but they were still going.
Yeah.
Whereas now we're bringing out air conditioners that have more technology to make them more efficient, but they're absolutely less reliable.
For sure. Yeah. There's more. There's more. So if you took a typical split unit, an inverter, you have usually predominantly. I'm sure we've got similar products. A lot of, and I'm sure they do it on purpose, Mitch. But you'd have an outdoor unit with a main control PCB with the inverter built in, and then you'd have to give the client the bad news that they need a compressor, an inverter PCB, the main PCB. You get the cost with the labour, and you sort of think it's probably cheaper to replace the system with a warranty. Is that similar to what you have in Australia?
Absolutely. And if you're going to speak with Daikin, can you please ask them why they don't have replaceable fuses in the PC boards? They are actually soldered in position.
Yeah,
So
we can ask
if
that.
a fuse goes, they expect you to replace the whole board, and it's just like, how's that green? Like, how's that eco-friendly?
I think that's the thing. Not just with Daikin, with most of the brands. I think it's just a money making exercise. It really is, because, in going back 20 years, it was a service culture where you'd attend a site and you would replace a compressor or a contactor, whereas now it's a replacement culture. But I believe the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to go back to a replacement culture where costs are, the cost of living in the UK is increasing. I think we're definitely going to start looking at people wanting their units fixed rather than replaced.
Yeah, I agree. And when I make these comments about the US and their contractors, I'm actually jealous. Like, because they go to people's houses and they can repair a lot of their units on the spot.
Yeah.
They pull out their capacitors and stuff, and it's like, I very rarely go to a service call where I can fix it on the spot. It's just like the first service call is me diagnosing
For sure.
what component needs to be replaced, and you're not going to carry like PC boards.
It's
because
kind
they're
of
like
it's so backwards, isn't it? Where you've got units which are more efficient, but they cost more to fix and they're more prone to break, versus a unit which is 20 years old, which costs more to run, but never fails. And when it does fail, it's an easy, low-cost replacement.
Yeah, and do they actually cost more to run? Because if you have a general household, like let's just say you have a single-story house.
Yep.
Basically, they manufacture the air cons, and you'll have a controller on the wall, and the controller or the return air vent is where it's sensing temperature. So if it's a 40-degree day here in Australia, and you go home and you like put the aircon on 22 degrees, yes, it's an inverter, but is it ever going to cycle down? Because because you have the cold air going to the rooms, it's got to make its way back to the middle of the house where the controller is before it actually senses anything.
For sure.
So there's actually a company here in Australia that have manufactured like third-party controllers, which I use, and I actually put sensors in each room. So let's just say you come home from work and it's only you at home, and you're going to be in the office working on the computer. You can tell the outdoor unit to sense the temperature from that room.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Because inverter is sold to you because it's more efficient, but in actual reality, it's only more efficient if the compressor is inverting down, which it very rarely does.
It's I'm not sure. I can't talk too much about the UK products, but speaking of Josh, our American HVAC engineer that we spoke to recently, he said that in the States, a lot of the cheaper inverter systems, like we'd have in the UK, low inverter systems, they actually just monitor via a sensor on the suction line, and that's how it basically ramps down. But I know I completely get what you're saying, and it's really interesting because once upon a time, and I'm sure you've got an old school engineer that you sort of have known through the years, which have got old fashioned views. But I was told by an old fashioned electrical engineer that an inverter compressor is actually less efficient at a lower speed, because an inverter compressor likes to run at a high speed and it runs a lot more freely. I don't know if someone's going to confirm that or shoot me down on it, but if that is true, I think a fixed speed compressor might be an element of more efficient.
Yeah, and I go to a lot of people's houses, and very rarely are the units actually ramping down, like I said before. So the whole inverter thing, I understand it can be more efficient, but it's only more efficient if it's installed correctly. And currently, whether it's Fujitsu, Daikin, Panasonic, Mitsubishi Electric, whatever, they give you an outdoor unit, an indoor unit, and one little square controller. And that square controller normally goes in like a hallway in the middle of your house. And people rarely put a supply vent there because that's where the return is. So it's just like it takes longer for that part of the house.
So Mitch, just to confirm,
at all.
Just to confirm on the system you're suggesting, Ben, so you understand it as well. This would be a single ducted system in a loft, and then you'd have one sensor and one controller doing the whole of upstairs or the whole house. Daikin in the UK and a few of the other brands Daikin have got something in the UK called the Easy Zone, and that's a third-party system, and I think that's what you're suggesting, where you have variable dampers in each of the ducts. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And then we plug it into the system. So we've done a few of them, and be honest with you, speaking to technical, whether it's Daikin, Fujitsu, LG, or whoever does these, technical have very little knowledge because it's not a popular product here. So that's, for us, a big turn-off for not installing it. So is your feedback that the system actually works very efficient? It's actually a good way of working.
It absolutely works more efficient. I have that here in this house right now. So basically, if I want to turn my air conditioner on right now, I get my phone and I turn it on and I say, I want it to sense from the sensor that's just on the wall over there. And I can hear when the outdoor unit actually turns off.
Gotcha.
So it works. But in Australia, Daikin don't have that easy
zone, we call it.
They've just come out with something that they've called the Daikin Air Hub.
Okay.
Which, to be honest, seems like a copy of what this Australian company has been doing for like the last 10 years.
Okay.
Interesting.
So on that system, if you were to install it, and especially the system in your house, and it doesn't work correctly, have you got a second company that you could phone and inquire about? Because what we've got in the UK, where we've put these Easy Zone controllers in, we've had a massive delay, a shortage of products for a start, so we've had to wait a long time for controllers. But if there is an issue, the technical aspect doesn't exist. Do you have that in Australia, the technical aspect, so you're more confident putting it in? Or are you just so familiar with it, if something goes wrong, you know exactly what it is?
They have the best customer support. So like, if I ring up Panasonic, I can get onto someone straight away. If I ring up Fujitsu, I can get onto someone straight away. If I ring up Daikin, you cannot get onto someone straight away. That's something that I believe they need to improve on, and I am a Daikin person.
You're a Daikin man.
The product that I use, they have like, I liken it to like an Apple store. Their website looks like that, and they have a team, and so if there's a problem with their product, they can ring the support hotline and they'll send their own person out to fix it, even though I installed it.
Okay.
So it's very, very good customer support.
Sorry, is this Daikin or is this the product, the Easy Zone type of product?
No, this is not Daikin.
Okay.
It's a product called My Air. It's just an Australian company, so I don't think that you'd have it in the UK. But I am a fan of their products because they have good customer support. But the reason why I use it is because it allows the customer, the end user, to have a more efficient system. Whereas the standard ducteds that
Mm-hmm.
all the brands send out with the one controller
Yeah.
and the one place where it senses temperature, I'm not sold that they're any more efficient than the units that they're installing in the US.
Okay. Okay. So in the
Even
UK,
though
we wouldn't do that. So in the UK, if we were to put a single ducted into a house, which we do, we would adjust the air in the bedrooms so that once the master bedroom has reached a certain temperature, the other rooms are within 2 degrees. But if we would put an individual ducted system in each bedroom for individual control for it to work more efficiently, but we'd put that onto a multi-split. So removing ducted units for a moment, are multi-splits popular in Australia? As in, like, for example, 5 wall mounts on a single condenser?
Yeah, absolutely. They're like they're not as popular as just like a back-to-back thing,
Yep.
but they're definitely around. I've installed heaps of them.
Okay.
And in regards to the ducted, like you can do like a VRV style. It's just that the reason why we don't do that as much is purely just because the price goes up.
Gotcha. Okay. For sure. Okay, right. So
Basically, oh sorry,
no, go on, Mitch.
if you just choose a temperature in the room, you don't need the installer to balance the ducts for each room, because if you have a sensor with a
with an air
zone
with your
motor
My
that
Air
can
system,
override itself,
it controls each room.
yeah, it'll just do that automatically.
Okay. So just hitting on a few questions on brands. So if I was to say who is not the most you put in, but who is your favourite brand of air conditioning in Australia? Not just your favourite brand.
I'd say Daikin.
They're your favourite brand. Not as in you put more of them in, but that is your favourite brand.
Yes, but the difference, the reason why that's my favorite is coming from an installer's perspective.
Yeah.
So, for example, they have the evaporator comes where you can dismantle it to get it into a roof space, put it back together and install it.
Okay.
Whereas not all brands do that, so it's harder to install. But the end user, I honestly couldn't really split the difference between a Daikin and a Panasonic, to be honest, or a Daikin and a Fujitsu. I think they're all thereabouts with each other.
So is your favourite brand based on the easiness as an engineer to work on the product, or the how easy it is to work on the product?
Yes, and how easy it is to install the product.
Okay. So in regards,
and how many options you have.
Okay.
Like, how many different types of units that I can sell to customers.
So do Daikin have quite a big range in Australia?
Yeah, I believe they have the most.
So just to touch on a few residential wall mounts. So in the UK, we've got their high end. We've got the Daikin Amura 3 and the Daikin Stylish. Do you have them products in Australia?
Yeah.
Have you tried taking any of them apart?
I actually haven't used them, to be honest.
Okay. Well, if you do put them, if you put them in, I'll be praying for you on the day you have to take a fan scroll out.
I've worked on units in the past where they've had like fancy like
That's it.
brands. I think LG had one, and they like when you turn it on, the front comes up.
That's it.
I've tried to work on one of them before, and I promised myself that I'd never do it again.
So the Stylish, I'm not saying the Stylish Amura 3 is a nightmare to take apart, but it just takes more time. Meaning they've got the drip trays built into the actual carcass. So you can't just drop the tray out. You have to lift the coil out, cut your fingers up, swear a few times, and then drag the scroll out. And you're usually above someone's desk, and there's probably an office full of people watching you, looking as if to say, does this guy know what he's doing? That's what we have with them. It's not all of their products, it's just them two. But they look amazing. Okay, so as an installer, your favorite brand is Daikin because you can strip and rebuild them and they're just easy to work with. In terms of after service, out of the sort of 3 brands that you've mentioned, Daikin, Fujitsu, and Panasonic, is there a noticeable difference? Speaking to other engineers, are they all the same behind the scenes? Ringing up technical, is Panasonic a slightly not as efficient product, but they have a better after service? Or, you know, how does it rate in Australia?
There is like an absolute difference, like a massive difference. So Daikin is renowned within like the industry to have terrible after sales, like getting technical support.
Yep.
It's almost impossible. Whereas like Panasonic and Fujitsu, they you can get onto someone straight away,
Okay.
and getting parts from them is very easy. So yeah, the reason why I stick with Daikin is just because they have the biggest like draw card for me is that it's the easiest unit to install as an installer.
Okay.
But servicing, they're a little bit hard to deal with.
Okay.
And
We have the
like
same
I
sort of
said,
thing
that's
here,
why I
though.
started the YouTube channel.
Right. Okay. So
So I've actually spoken to Panasonic and I said, if you make splittable coils, I will start using you. The only
Okay.
reason I don't use you is because it's hard to get your units into the customer's roof without dismantling their roof.
I see. Is this because if you were to retrofit and put a unit into somebody's loft, the loft hatch is quite small? Is that right?
Yeah, so if I go into somebody's house and I need to get the unit into the roof, we normally just do it via the return air duct.
I see.
Grill.
Oh, I see. So what is that? Is that a measurement? So in the UK, we do a lot of Daikin ducted units. They're very good. We have a depth of 620 mil, so 62 centimeters. I know we have a Samsung product which has just been thrown on our desk, which is 45 centimeters. Are you suggesting that you actually need less space than 45 centimeters?
Yeah, so I go into someone's house and I will cut a return air vent, which is 900 by 400. So it's a rectangle.
Goodness
so
me.
400 mil width.
Okay.
And I can slide it up there.
So how do you get in? Are
And
you less than
I
are you
actually
less
did
than
one
40
today.
centimeters? Do you fit through that grill as well?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's 900.
Oh, okay. It's
like,
900 long by 40
long-
centimeters.
lengthwise. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So if you have a heavy,
And I did a small one today.
oh really?
I did a 400 by 750 return air vent today for a 8.5 kilowatt Daikin ducted, just straight up, because you can dismantle the indoor unit.
Understood. Okay. So we don't really have that in the UK, but I get it because yeah, it makes total sense. If you haven't got a product which makes life as easy as that, I don't know why you'd step away from it because you're not, you can actually do the work. So okay, fine. So is Daikin a bigger brand than Fujitsu and Panasonic in Australia, as in market share?
Yes.
I see. So in regards to them needing
They're the biggest.
Okay, so in regards to them having the after support, they have a bigger market to deal with, whereas Panasonic and Fujitsu in Australia, they have less market share, but they're more effective behind the scenes.
Yeah, so Daikin are massive in Australia and throughout Asia. And a lot of like new builds, like let's just say apartment buildings,
Yep.
commercial buildings, they actually specify to have Daikin or Mitsubishi electric.
Okay.
They're the two that they specify, and a lot of people went with Daikin because I'm more familiar with it.
Okay.
So honestly, I feel like Daikin don't really care if you don't use them. They're just that big that they don't care.
Sure.
Whereas the other manufacturers want your business, so
I'm with you.
Yeah,
care
we've
more.
got the same sort of thing.
We've
here.
got so in the UK, Mitsubishi Electric and Daikin are the top two. I'd say I can't give you the exact figures, but I'm sure they both had around 45% of the market share.
Yeah, what's your favourite, Jacob?
I like them both equally the same. But obviously, so Mitsubishi Electric isn't huge in Australia.
It's definitely bigger than what I'm making it out to be. It's just for whatever reason, I've never really used them, but a lot of people swear by them. But I would not say that they're in the top three.
Right. Okay. Fine. So in regards to a product that you mentioned about, the My Air system, I do know that Mitsubishi Electric in New Zealand have got a controller which does exactly what the My Air system does, and it's done from the Mitsubishi Electric controller, because we've questioned the UK branch and they don't have it here. What Daikin have done here, and I'm sure they've, you just said Daikin have brought a new product out in Australia. I think they just buy a competitor, badge it, and then they can just sell it on their product only, because it gives them a competitive advantage over another brand which doesn't have an air zone type system.
That is actually what they've done.
Oh, really?
That is exactly what you just said.
They've done exactly that. Because then what they'll say is you can't use a My Air. You'll lose your warranty on a My Air using a My Air product on their products. You have to use their own affiliated product. It's smart business, and that's probably why they're doing it.
They actually haven't done that here, but that would make absolute sense if they said that. That would be a good business move by them. Luckily, they haven't done that. But it's not just the fact that I can use like modulating zones and the sensors. Like for example, the Daikin app is, I believe, very like slow, whereas like this My Air, it's just like so fast and seamless. They put so much more effort into it.
Okay.
So there's more than one reason. And I'm a Daikin person, but I'm just, I wouldn't want it in my house, so I don't put it in other people's.
No, that's it's the same with us. That's a great mentality to have, because you never really get called out, because if you don't put it in your house, why would you put it in someone else's? But in terms of controllers in terms of controllers in Australia, what is the current Daikin wall controller? Is it the Madoka?
I've never heard of that term. It's just a Daikin square controller. It's called a BRC
15E or something.
Like the model number is BRC.
Oh goodness me! Okay, so in the UK, in the UK, have a look. Have a look when we get off the call. Look up the Daikin Madoka. So it's Daikin's current controller, and it replaced the BRC controller. It looks and what's great with it is you have a Bluetooth app on your phone, so you do all your commissioning from the phone app, and all the end user gets is temperature control. There's a lot of plus sides with it, and the plus sides is it stops a customer fiddling and making massive mistakes. The downside with it is where it is quite simple, it can also be very complicated. But that's what we've got in the UK is a Madoka, and it works exactly the same. You can put it on older systems, but it looks great. It looks really cool. That's been out here for a few years now. But I personally prefer the old BRC controllers because you have more control, and you can be on site fiddling. Whereas what they're trying to do, Daikin and other brands, is make the engineer more, reliant on the apps, because the apps do have a lot of information.
Yeah, and sometimes simple just works, which is why I'm jealous of these contractors in the US. Like, for example, there's a lot of information that you can get using the Daikin like service tool.
Yep.
But you have to buy that, and then you need to learn how to use it.
For sure.
It's not as simple as just going on the site with a multimeter and a tool bag
and being able to fix it. So you
So that's also why I stay with Daikin, to be honest, because I'm familiar. Gotcha.
So just to wrap this up, so stock levels in like your hottest part of the year. So in the UK, I know the Japanese, they have a saying, it's the Kaizen method. It's called just in time. So they bring loads of air conditioning products into the UK, and then they're sold before they even arrive here. So there is always stock delays. How is that in Australia? Is it similar?
For the last 2 years, or three years actually, there's been massive stock issues in the summer, and I've never had any issues prior to that. But for the last 2 years, and it's happening again now.
Right.
I don't know if I can get the products that I'm quoting customers because there's a massive shortage.
Right. Okay. And are you told why? What excuses do you have? Because there seems to be a large varied amount.
I think the excuse that we get told is Australia is a long way away, and to get ships over here is more expensive. The cost of fuel has gone up. The cost of labor has gone up.
Yeah.
So, and also the docks here in Australia, they want more money, so they're striking, and just then you have COVID on top of it. But I think out of all those things, the number one excuse you get given is there's a shortage of chips, whatever that means.
Okay,
Like
we
chips over
that's
the
something
board.
that we share. We're told the same thing, and I think we have to believe it. But the demand has risen. That's why we sort of touched on when we first started the call about how luxury to necessity, because the UK is slowly getting into the necessity, and the market has grown significantly at the moment. It may shrink. We never know. We don't know what the future holds with the world, etc., etc. But we are told there is a massive shortage on chips. I'm still a little unsure with it personally. I believe it's probably likely to be labour shortages in factories, and just people are just slow because people have just got a bit slow since COVID and a bit lazy, and things are taking more time. But we share the same excuses. We always get shipping, or there's a typhoon in Japan and the ship's fallen over. We've had that one a few times.
Well, I've had a customer that I installed an air conditioner. 2 years later, they had a power surge, and it damaged the outdoor printed circuit board in the Daikin unit. And so it's absolutely under warranty, and that I could not get that part. They actually had no heating throughout the whole winter.
Goodness
because
me.
we just couldn't get the part. And for the first time ever, I was actually looking for people that could repair printed circuit boards.
Oh, goodness me. Right.
Because it was getting to the point where like a customer went throughout the whole winter without heating. Yeah.
So with that,
the printed circuit board
so with that,
faulty.
in regards to you using the Daikin products in Australia because of the strip and rebuild, if with us, what we do as a business at the end of the year, we sit down and look at all our suppliers, all the providers of aircon that we spend with. We do predominantly spend with Daikin and Mitsubishi Electric more than the others. But if we have that instance that you had, we literally score them at the end of the year. And for example, this year, because what you've just said, we haven't had, but we've had similar instances where we've had to wait like 2 months, and we're letting down the clients. So it's a case of, well, if the small, and what we've had is some of the smaller brands, Samsung, Panasonic, Hitachi, and Fujitsu in the UK, and Toshiba, their market share has grown because of lack of availability of products. So it could change in the UK where actually people say, well, you know what? We can't get your products. You're a pain in the arse to deal with. We're just going to put this product in and it's cheaper. So it's, that in the UK could change the market. I don't know if that could affect the Australia market because us engineers, we talk to each other, and I'm sure you have other engineers that you talk to, and I know your channel is talking to engineers, but I think they have to win the engineers over because there is a lot of gossip and, talk.
Absolutely. There's a Facebook page with Australian air conditioning technicians.
Yeah.
And honestly, 95% of these technicians don't want to use Daikin anymore because it's so hard to get
goodness, really?
support. So there is a massive, massive shift happening at the moment. And I'm actually one of the last people holding on. And the only reason is just because I'm so familiar with it and they're easier to install. But like I said, I've spoken with Panasonic. I've sat down with them and spoken with them and said, if you had splittable coils, I would be using Panasonic.
Gotcha.
And also with Daikin commercial, so I just did a quote this week where Daikin quoted me on a VRV and Panasonic quoted me on a VRF. Panasonic provided 5 years warranty. Daikin, if it's commercial, they only provide 1 year warranty.
Goodness me, really?
Panasonic, they would help you. Panasonic would help you commission it. They would give commissioning assistance. Daikin, absolutely not. So there's a massive shift. So I agree. I think these manufacturers are crazy not to win over the contractor. They don't need to win over the customer. They need to win over the contractor because they take our professional advice.
For sure. I think, Mitch,
And
I think
yeah,
over the
so
next 5 years, I think things could change massively. In the UK, the top two, Daikin and Mitsubishi Electric, they're both great products. After service is hit and miss with both sometimes. But I believe the push in the UK with Samsung and also Panasonic, where they've bought up some big distributors, they are exactly what you've just said. Where they will bend over backwards because they've got a lot of fight in the belly to basically win the work off the big boys. So I think some of the bigger companies have sit back with their feet up, and I think they've been in a position for the last 10 years to sort of say, well, we're so big that we can't, they'll never take our market share. But it's interesting because what you've just suggested with Panasonic, our Panasonic rep will listen to this and he'll agree because they are very much like that. They will call us, they will be on the end of the phone. They'll offer us more help because they have got more time to help. And then what will happen is as engineers grow and get older and they become younger and they sort of spend more time in the industry, I think it will push some of the smaller brands up to the top one and top two. In regards to warranties, what's really interesting,
I agree.
Mitch, in Australia versus the UK is, if you spend a certain amount of money and you're trained a certain way, we offer 7 to 10 year warranties on Mitsubishi Electric, Daikin, Panasonic, Samsung products. Is that not the case in Australia at all?
Absolutely not. So residential, the norm is for all these companies to offer 5-year warranty.
Okay.
And commercial, they can only give you 1-year warranty. And like I said before, everyone just uses Daikin. So even like when people give you plans, they'll say, "Can you please quote or tender on this project?" And it has to be Daikin or Mitsubishi Electric.
Yep.
Now I'm just a small business owner, but I have friends and know people in the trade that work for companies that do millions and millions and millions of dollars of Daikin, and they have swapped over and now are using Panasonic and
it's really interesting.
Mitsubishi Electric. They are actually moving away from Daikin, so it's shifting.
That's really
sure.
it's interesting because in the UK we'd call it a valued add solution. We'd propose a different brand, and if the market drops and there is less money available and things start going a bit bad and sour, building owners will start looking at cheaper alternatives. But I'm shocked because your products, I take it you're like us on using Daikin as a product. We on the commercial we'd have a VRV 4 Plus, and they're looking at bringing the R32 version out at the moment. So if I was to put an a VRV 4 into a commercial building, I can offer them 7-year warranty, part warranty. I'm so shocked that you can't out in Australia.
That's officially 6 years more than what Daikin is offering in Australia.
Damn. I know we're not mentioning.
It is 1-year warranty.
And I know we're not mentioning. So in Australia, where it's hotter, the units do work significantly.
Yeah, I was going to say that being a workhorse, our usage compared to their usage
of course. But then Ben, what we've got here, which you don't have in Australia, is our aircon units are used for heating a lot more than they are in Australia. So we're still using our systems for 12 hours a day, 365 days a year. So I'm quite surprised that Daikin haven't, or just any other brand haven't offered 5 to 7 year warranty. It's because what happens is if a part goes down, the manufacturer pays us a labour allowance. So they'll pay us £60 an hour or £50 an hour for changing a compressor, and it works out. They give you about 350 quid for changing the compressor. If it's after the first year, we only give 1 year's labour. We'd still charge the customer for our time. But what that does is it keeps the customer happier, and it keeps them happier with the brand because they know their parts are covered. I think that might change I don't know. Is there talk that might change in Australia, or is it just the way it's always been?
So how it works here is Daikin will give a 5-year warranty, and even if it's at the 4.5-year mark, if a compressor goes down, they will pay me labor to go and fix it. So the
Okay.
customer doesn't have to pay anything.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Now, there's other companies, like I said, Panasonic, Fujitsu, that actually they do like these things called like cashback. So if you use their products and you spend over a certain amount, you get cash back. Daikin don't do any of that. They're just so big and they're just churn along. But 100%, the technicians in the industry do not like using them for the one fact that you can't get any support.
Right. Okay.
And they're hard to deal with. So there is a shift, and I think there's going to be a massive change in like the next 5 years.
I think what could drive that as well, Mitch, is
warranty.
What could change that, Mitch? We've had it here, is where you have several individuals that work in the offices of Daikin or Mitsubishi Electric or whoever the top companies are, and they leave and they go to some of the smaller companies, and they have this fight to beat the big machine. It's really interesting, the differences. I think Daikin are obviously a lot bigger than I thought in Australia because they offer very little warranties. Because in the UK, that's everything.
They're massive in Asia.
I know Daikin have done a great big deal with. Do you have Gree in Australia? Because I know Daikin have done a big deal with Gree where they use the inverter compressor and the inverter modules from the Daikin product in the Chinese product. Have you got that out there?
I think somewhere in Australia they're floating around, but no one uses them.
Okay.
So no, not really.
Okay. All right. Just to wrap this up, then. So Ben, have you got any questions?
No, I think I'm done for questions. Yeah.
Okay. So Mitch, just a second to sort of point to anyone in regards to getting them over to your YouTube channel. So what you're offering your viewers and where you're looking at helping them. It'd be just a few words on your channel.
Basically, my goal is to make a Daikin playlist. So when you have an error and it gives you a code, I want my YouTube channel to be the place that you can go and get all the information on it. And I think there's an actual need for that within the industry here in Australia. So
okay,
that's
well,
the main reason. That's
on that basis, Mitch, I hope you can get this video shared and somebody from Daikin Australia can spot you, because I think they should be sponsoring you, because all the flaws that you've mentioned today is actually a great opportunity for them to say, this guy is actually trying to help Daikin as a brand to become better, rather than we're trying to shoot them down and you're going to switch, because you obviously like the product because they're your go-to product. So I think, and even also anyone watching in the UK, because I've seen your fault codes, they're the same fault codes that we have. So they should be using your channel for a go-to, because it is very simple and very easy to diagnose. I think we could probably all become a YouTube engineer by watching your channel.
Well, the crazy thing is, like, I'm just, one person in this massive world. And if you go and write in, like, Daikin L5, my channel comes up. And it's just like, that's what I mean. So these massive corporations like Daikin, they're really behind the 8 ball with how people are consuming content now.
For sure.
I never watch like TV anymore, because if there's something that I want to watch, I go onto YouTube.
Yeah, for sure.
And now they're actually bringing out controllers that have a YouTube button. Like,
interesting.
And it's just like, I just think that times are changing, and like, for example, just quickly, like there's companies that are like Toshiba. No one uses Toshiba, but they're the first ones that are offering a 7-year warranty. They're the only brand that's offering a 7-year warranty, residential, not commercial. And then like these other companies are doing cashbacks, but you can get after sale support. It's really easy. I feel like Daikin's falling behind, but I still think they're a good product, and I still believe in them. So yeah, I'm trying to help them. So
well, hopefully they're watching this, because I think you're a great affiliate of Daikin. And obviously one of the reasons why we approach you, Mitch, is because watching your videos is I like to use the word care, because we do live in a careless society and it's getting more careless. So for yourself to actually go out your way to help others by, in the industry that we love, I think it's one of the greatest industries out there because it's so varied. You're actually trying to help engineers. And one thing I think you'd agree, Ben, in taking away from this conversation is, did you ever come across the principle KISS, keep it simple, stupid?
Yes.
I think
Yeah,
I
I've heard
think
that,
we're
yeah.
I think we're so complicated as an industry now, where I think going back to keep it simple, stupid is something which was forgotten along the lines.
I absolutely agree, and that's why I have some question marks over the whole inverter push. I'm all for being doing what's best for the environment, but like I was saying before, I wasn't speaking like bad about these contractors in the US. I'm actually jealous because they're still using products
Yeah,
where
for
you
sure.
can actually repair them.
Yeah.
Whereas like I go to units that just have a fuse blown, and the only option is to replace the
For
unit.
sure.
like,
You're
for example.
suggesting
Or replace
simple.
the actual like printed circuit board.
You're suggesting simple electromechanical contactors, TEVs. I've not seen a TEV on years. We don't do a lot of refrigeration, but you could adjust the TEV. You can play around with the contactor. Yeah. That's what. I don't think it's ever going to go that way. It'll never go backwards. In America, I believe that some is staying that way, but some are going heavy on splits and multi-splits. I think it depends on what part of the states you live in.
Yeah.
Hopefully, some of our American friends will actually jump on your channel and. Sorry, Mitch. Hopefully, some of our American viewers will use your channel because they're going to need it.
Well, I actually watch some of these US channels, and I asked the technicians, and I'm like, "Do you guys not use inverter?" And they were just like, "No," and I'm just like, I was so shocked. But in regards to Australia, like my channel, I actually have had a lot of technicians from other companies, like competing companies, contacting me asking questions,
That's brilliant.
and it's just like it's insane.
That's
yeah.
brilliant. That's brilliant. Well, in America, Daikin have just bought out a big company called Goodman's. So Daikin's takeover of the world is now in the States. So I believe what you're doing, trying to help engineers, if you do things the right way, Mitch, I think you can be in America because they're going to need it because it's so new to them.
Right, Mitch. I'm going to.
Well, yeah, I'm a fan of Daikin. I want to see them succeed. So I hope they do.
Okay, for all your Daikin needs, head over to Mitch's channel. I'm going to put your link in the description so everyone can jump onto your channel and fault find.
Fantastic.
Yeah, no worries.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mitch. Have a good night.
No worries.
All the best. Great to speak to you.